Hey, what's going on? Mathew, Tamin here. As an entrepreneur and a businessman, I'm always looking for opportunities to learn, to grow, and to network. I had the privilege of speaking with Jim Penman. He owns a lawn mowing company based out of Melbourne, Australia. Jim started this company in 1982 with $24. And today they have a turnover of $500 million, $500 million. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about Jim is he is a simple man, very simple. And another thing too that sets Jim apart is that he loves the Lord Jesus Christ. So as you listen to this interview, I want you to pay close attention. And I want you to watch until the end of this, because they said when you sit before great men, keep your mouth shut, get a pen and write. That's exactly what I did. To be able to sit under someone that's generated over $500 million. I took some notes, lots of notes, but I want to share with you at the end of this interview some key points that you can utilize in your life, in your business, and you can see results. So make sure that you watch until the end of this. I'll see you then. When I had the opportunity to see a little bit about your story when you shared it, I thought that was very interesting, because to find businessmen that talk about Jesus in today's world is rare. It's very rare. But before we dive into this, and again, most of the audience that I have, these are just, Christian entrepreneurs. They're just getting started, trying to figure things out. They're just trying to find direction where to go, whether it's with business, with ministry, with family. So we cover different topics. But before we get started, I saw a clip that you had on LinkedIn talking about mental health. And that's something that is so crucial. Before I get into your story, and that really captured my heart because it touched me, it moved me. And what is it about mental health that you think needs to be talked about in terms of the workplace?
We're very aware of issues because as franchisors, because we communicate with our franchisors all the time, and you often see problems. But a very simple way to look at this is this. We deal with working at heights. We deal with dangerous machinery, chainsaws, mowers, which spin very fast. There's a lot of dangerous stuff. By far, the number one danger to their life is faced by our franchisees is suicide.
Wow.
In the whole history of Jim's Group, we've got over 5,000 franchisees, 34 years and counting. One person has died on the job, but several have died by suicide. Just a few weeks ago, one of our franchisors died. So it's a massive issue, and you hear it all the time. We have an enormous stress on community, and we all of our there's a whole lot of things I'm happy to talk about in the interview, but there's a whole lot of things we do to actually address this issue.
Wow, I think that's important, because, and I'll bring that up first because with what's going on in the world, it's kind of hard to separate what's happening in the world and a lot of the stress that people are going through right now. So many people going through issues and trying to figure things out. So I thought that was really neat that you would even bring that up because in the corporate world, that's something where it's kind of put on the side. The highlight is so much more on revenue over people's lives. So I thought that was very interesting when you brought that up.
It's very far from a normal corporate. It's very personal. All my franchisees have my email address and phone number, and they can ring me anytime, day, night. It's very personal.
Wow. That's different because you would think the opposite. There's someone in your position, they would want to give everyone their contact, because they know that they're going to get tons of emails, this issue, this questions, that. What made you take that stance to want to make yourself that available to so many people?
It's actually a joyful experience because I find a lot of things go wrong and I want to know about them, and I can often help people. It's one of the most positive things about my job. You look about why you do your job. so often I can help people. But the other thing too is, from a purely practical point of view, everything's related to franchisee success. So
Yes.
if I'm in touch with the grassroots and knowing what's going wrong, I can look at it and I can make changes. We do that all the time. There wouldn't be a week goes by we don't get some information back and say, hey, this isn't working correctly, or this person isn't responding correctly, or this system, IT system's not right, or there's something unfair about this particular process, just anything. So it's actually incredibly useful. Most of the really big changes that we make are made as a result of direct feedback from franchisees. And that's my job. I mean, partly too, Matthew, it's because I'm not very good at doing most things. I'm not a great manager. I'm not good at IT. I'm not good at finance.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of things and legalistics and all stuff that are not my area. So one of the few things that I can probably do as well as anyone else is just be in touch. And because my brand's on the company, it gives me an advantage. And I make sure that when people come to training, I try and greet every single person personally and speak with them a couple of times at least, so that they feel they can contact me if they need to.
Wow. I think that's incredible. Now, that's incredible because most of the times you see the opposite, whether it's the owner or the CEO of a company, they try to shy away. They just want to meet people when they absolutely have to, So I think to have that community, it's important because it shows the people that you genuinely care about them. And I think that's something that's definitely vital. And I think too, when I heard about your story from someone that used to be an atheist, I'm just so intrigued by that. To make such a transition from being an atheist to serving the Lord Jesus, I'm so interested in walking me through your journey from, were you always an atheist? Did you come from that background, your family, and what made that switch for you? That's very interesting.
Well, I sort of, one of those things where you were sent to Sunday school and stuff when you were younger. My parents weren't really churchgoers. When I became 14, I just basically rejected it all. I would have described myself as an agnostic rather than atheist, but in practical terms, an atheist. I guess I must have felt a certain spiritual interest. I'd always talked to anybody having to do with religion. I went to a Billy Graham concert back in 1968 when I must have been about 16.
Wow.
But it didn't affect me. I just, actually, to be honest, I mean, it's pretty shameful to say. I was with a friend and we were sort of making fun of people going down the front. It just didn't touch me in any way. I've seen videos of these things since then. And I thought, what on earth was going wrong with you? Why couldn't you see it?
Yeah.
But what really happened was that, to a certain extent, that came out of the research that I did. I was trying to understand. I did a PhD in history. I was trying to understand the reasons for the rise and fall of civilizations, and I came to understand Christian ethics, including things like chastity and fasting and Sabbath keeping, were very important to the rise of civilizations and what makes them strong. And when you lose that, why they decline. So I kind of, in a sense, came to understand the value of Christian, which I didn't think in the early days because I was very, I used to get into trouble. I went to a church school and I'd put up articles on the news board sort of advocating, tolerance of homosexuality and stuff like that. I was very lefty, radical. But then I came to realize there was a point to the Christian ethics. And I just didn't believe in God. I could see the point of it. And then it was when I was, I must be 28 years old. We had an orientation week at university, and I've been there for a long time, like 9 years by that stage.
Yeah.
I was walking through, and there was a bunch of people sitting behind the table at Christian Union. I just got talking to them. That was all. It was very simple. I just talked to them, got to like them. They invited me along to this sort of camp that they were having, this retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And the first morning of the camp, people were to sit down. It was quiet time where you were to sit down, you pray and read the Bible and stuff. Well, I can pray because I believe in God. So I had an exercise book, like and a red pen, and I just wrote down the thoughts that were in my mind. And out of that, I got a very vivid sense God was calling me. So I sat down, atheist and got up a Christian.
Wow.
Which surprised me because I've been actually quite militant, anti, really the other side. When I was at school, I used to go around. We had to watch these football matches, which I thought was a waste of time. And I would go and argue with people,
Wow.
say, do you believe in God? If so, why? I mean, I was that kind of obnoxious, arrogant so-and-so, but I did. So I kind of switched sides. And I remember one person, they told me, I wasn't there, they said, Jim Penman's become a Christian. And this guy
Wow.
just, what, Jim Penman, a Christian? Jim Penman, that guy, a Christian. He just couldn't believe it. It was
Wow.
so, but I switched sides, like Paul on the road to Damascus. It was the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I went on eBay and just listed coffee shop and stuff, which was an amazing experience. And I got involved in leadership roles and all kinds of things. And did kids, we've worked with kids because I like kids and like improv at the conference that we had and all kinds of things. It was just amazing period.
Wow, I think that's fascinating just to go almost like we're saying instead someone just go cold turkey where 1 minute you're doing something and instantly it just switched. Now, do you think that with that transition that you've been feeling some type of a tug in your heart for a while that prepared you for that moment? Or do you think it was just something that happened in the moment?
I must have there was a spiritual yearning. I remember thinking before that it would be good to believe, to have that sort of sense of, I don't know. I remember it attracted me. I always talk to anybody come to the door, the Mormon missionaries, anybody. I'd always talk to them. It was sort of a family thing. So I just didn't agree with them. So there
Yeah.
must have been an appeal. It just, I don't know. There's an emptiness in your heart that only God can fill. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. And it's just, when I went there, it was obvious. I remember the first Christmas after I became a Christian, I listened to Christmas carols, and for the first time in my life, knowing what they meant, it was just overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So I mean that from so from that transition of phase when you converted, now had you started your business back, your lawn business back then, or what led you to actually start a lawn mowing business? What was it about that attracted you to it, or was this something that you just decided to give it a try? Or out of all the different business that you could do, why did you choose the lawn mowing?
Well, in a certain sense, I started when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
I was doing Bob a job for the Cub Scouts, and I knocked on the door of a neighbour across the back fence and offered to do a job. And he said, "Do you want to have a job to, things like raking my driveway every week?" So he used to give me 2 shillings as pre-decimal currency,
Right.
probably equivalent of a couple of bucks now. I did that most of my childhood, just apart from the past years. And then when I left school, I took a gap year, and part of the thing I did was actually put a notice in the window of a hardware shop and offered to do gardening, and I got a few jobs, 3 clients, and then I kept them on through the early years of university. And then about 1975, when I was in my like 4th year at university, I decided I needed a car because I thought it might impress girls. Doing too well. So I thought if I had a car, that might be an advantage. Turned out to be not didn't work at all, actually. No, wasn't effective. But to pay for the car, the loan on the car, I really needed a bit better money. And of course, I had a car now, so I could carry a lawnmower around. So I decided to buy a lawnmower. So instead of
Wow.
charging so much per hour, which was pretty cheap, I
Yeah.
charged so much lawn. And that way you could make like $10 an hour, which in those days was a lot of money. This is like 1975.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even like for Australian dollars being worth a bit less than US dollars. And so I started part-time. And as a student, it was good because I like being outside. I always loved the outdoors. I always had a dream to have a sort of a farm or some big place. I love space, I love nature. So it was kind of good. It was kind of healthy, and it was physically active, and I spent time outside, and it was a break from study because I used to study all through the holidays. I just used to follow my research
Yeah.
interests when I was an undergraduate. And I continued that, did a PhD, which took me a ridiculous amount of time. And that I became a Christian in 1980.
Okay.
And then shortly after that, like 1982, I finished. I actually failed the first time, as a matter of fact. I got it later. And
Wow.
what do I do with myself? I had no money. I was actually quite deeply in debt, about 35 grand in debt. I was just
Wow.
married. My wife was a student. So our financial situation wasn't exactly rosy. But
Yeah.
lawn mowing I knew how to do. I just that was it. So in 1982, just couple of weeks before Christmas, I put some leaflets in letterboxes, $24 investment.
Wow.
And it started from there, and it just grew. So I
Wow.
started mowing lawns and did it myself. That's why it's called Jim's Mowing, because it was Jim Mowing. Took on some subbies, started building up and selling lawn mowing rounds. And then in a few years later, this company called VIP came to Melbourne, and they were a franchise company, franchise lawn mowing, which seemed to be unlikely. So I basically went to. I thought these guys would swallow me. I thought they'd crush me, because they had 250 franchisees, which is enormous.
Wow.
I had about 6 subbies. I mean, I was very tiny. I actually rang them up, said to them, "Can you, I'm Jim from Jim's Mowing," and they knew that. And I said, I really don't want to compete because you guys are too good. Can I just help to build your company within, provide you with leads and so forth? They said, "Well, no, we don't really want that." So I sort of try and compete. So I went to the Expo, Franchise Expo, which is 1988.
Yeah.
Went to the stand. Went up to the stand, took up my badge they used to give us about who we were, and said, "Look, I'm interested in VIP. Can you tell me?" Now, fortunately, he didn't ask me why I was interested, because I would have told him. I'm a very poor liar, especially in those days. So, but he didn't ask, and then he told me this stuff and about how it worked. He gave me this brochure, and a bit later, the state manager came on and said, "That's Jim Penman. Don't tell him anything else." So they kicked me off the stand. But I thought, this franchising system they were doing had some sense.
Yeah.
It made sense. I could see why a person would join and why they'd stay with it, group marketing, this kind of stuff. But I thought, I reckon I can do something to work better for franchisees.
Yeah.
So I started my first franchisee in mid-1989. And somebody asked me at the time, how many franchisees might you have one day? And I said, well, I don't know if it's going to work out, but maybe I'd have 100 one day.
Wow.
So that was very modest expectations.
Yeah.
But the real point about it, Mathew, and I suppose where it comes down to a Christian point of view, is that I couldn't be involved in a business where I didn't see value to the person I'm dealing with. So I looked at everything that was good about their system, and there was a whole lot of things that I didn't like. For example, when a franchisee moves into an area, they go to the people who got regular clients there and say, "Okay, these are all ours now, and we'll pay you." I forget whether it was a small amount or nothing or whatever. They just take them off them.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's not nice. Who would want that? So I said, I'm not going to do that. So I actually put it in the contract that you can't take the franchisees' jobs off them without their consent. They're regular clients, and because I didn't think it was fair. And then I put a whole stack of other things in the contract. For example, my franchisees would have absolute right to territory. So a job comes in a territory, if they want it, they get it.
Okay.
But they can take jobs themselves anywhere they wish.
Sure.
They're not bound to territory. They can grow as big as they like, and they can put as many workers on, and the fees don't change.
Sure.
There's a sort of base fee type level. So I did a whole stack of things. I gave them an automatic right of renewal. I put a whole stack of protections in. And I actually spent 9 months arguing with lawyers, because they were telling me this is not how you do these things. But the way they put it, you're being too nice. You're binding yourself too much.
Yeah.
So it was, but I just said to them, it's got to be a system that I want to join, that I would want to be part of, because I want my franchisees to succeed. I did things like, when I started off, I knew from selling lawn mowing rounds that people who didn't give great customer service tended to fail. So what I used to do, I didn't want my people to fail.
Yeah.
Because that was offensive to me. So I would actually trial them, put them up in the road, and I get feedback from my trainers. So if a person didn't do well on the trialing, I wouldn't take them.
Okay.
VIP would take them because they had no selection process, but I wasn't going to do it. It was just wrong. So I developed this kind of I put a thing on the bottom of my email, which you've seen when I emailed you. Our first priority is the welfare of franchisees. We are also passionate about customer service.
Yes.
We sign new franchisees and franchisors we're convinced will succeed. And that was there from the beginning. We've changed so much, but that basic idea. So part of it was this Christian idea of servant leadership, which is best exemplified by Jesus washing his disciples' feet.
Oh, yes.
And people don't understand how radical that was, because washing people's feet in those days was a really degraded job that a slave would do. It was really demeaning. Sometimes a very revered rabbi, his disciples would wash his feet.
Yeah.
That was unusual because he was so revered. Jesus washed his disciples' feet himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the vision that we have at Jim's, is that we as franchisors serve franchisees. That's our prime ultimate thing. And people often ask me, you started with so little, you've got 5,000 plus franchisees, biggest franchise chain in the Southern Hemisphere, if you want to put it that way. I said, don't you feel proud? And I said, there's one thing only that I really feel proud of, is that by and large, my franchisees as a group share my ethics,
Yes.
my ethos, which is very heavily indoctrinated. I give the main talk in franchise training 2 hours, and it's all about that service to clients, service to franchisees. And then I talk to the franchisors, training them about that selection and why they select and why you've got to put franchisees first. So it's a very powerful process. We talk about it people being gymified, and that culture is very, very strong within gyms. We had a guy called Brian Duckett who'd been involved in franchising from the UK for decades. And he came to one of our national conferences and he said, Gyms is like nothing I've ever seen in franchising. And it's that attitude we serve franchisees. Our franchisees, actually, the contract initially I put in place. I got as far as I could everything that franchise would want. Then I went to people I wanted my first franchisees, people who, some of my best subbies, and some people who bought lawn mowing rounds. I was going to convert them. And I said, can you see any problems with this? And they suggested changes, and I made them. And the lawyer said, you're not going to want to do this. This is not the way franchising is run. You're going to want to give yourself power. I actually did the opposite. I gave my franchisees more power with time, give them the right to change to a different region, different franchisor, give a chance to vote out their franchisor, including myself when I'm the direct franchisor.
Wow.
Veto changes to their own manuals.
Wow.
A majority disagree in writing. We cannot change the manual. We have a rule against third-line enforcing. We cannot make people buy stuff from us if they'd rather buy it somewhere else so they get the same quality cheaper. We do all these things, we put them in with time. So the whole system became more and more pro-franchisee.
Wow. I mean, I'm just here just soaking all this stuff in because I'm listening to you, Jim, and I'm taking some notes. And there are a few things you mentioned that I just wanted to kind of go over just a few moments of each one. One of the first things that caught my attention when you talked about when the other company turned you down, that no, they don't want anything to do with you. And I keep hearing resilience. In order to be successful, there's a certain amount of resilience that you need. If you can you just talk about resilience? What was it about that moved you to want to keep going, even after you got turned down and you realized, you know what, I have to keep going? Because today's world, a lot of times when people want to do something, if it doesn't work the first time, even if it's something they want to do, they'll switch to something else. They try like 55 different things. They jump. So if you can just talk about resilience and what that meant for you, especially in the beginning stage of your business.
Look, I have a moral purpose in what I do. It's not really a matter of anything but, what God's called me to do with my life. In my PhD research, I uncovered ideas about the way society works, which is very radically different. Wasn't accepted, still isn't actually. But even though I did my work in sort of things like history and cross-cultural anthropology, it had implications for biology. If you could work out a way to amend people's biology, then you could actually do great things. Now, to do that, you need a lot of money and you need expertise. Yes. I didn't have either of. So I had to actually build a substantial business so I could fund my research. I currently spend several $1 million a year on this research foundation that I've got running, which has a major, very important implications for the future and things like drug addiction and so forth, treating them. We looked at the biochemistry, epigenetics of mild food shortage, amongst other things. So I couldn't give up because I had this task. that God had given me that was just impossible to let go. Now, exactly how I would achieve it in the early days, I didn't really think lawn mowing would be it, but I had to do it. Giving up was just not something that could cross my mind. It's just not possible.
Wow.
But it's also, resilience has to do with other things too. I think, for example, fitness is very important to me. I got up this morning. I went out to do some weightlifting. I ran for half an hour on a
Wow.
treadmill, and I do that every day, except when I work at my farm at the weekends, and then I actually go out several hours clearing blackberries and digging gardens and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I keep very physically fit, and I think that helps. Obviously, I try and control my weight. I weigh about 66 kilos, which is about where I should be. So I look at my diet. I practice 16/8 fasting. I expose myself to cold showers and things. So a lot of things basically discipline the body.
Yes.
And the mind is a result of what you do with the body. So people think that to be happy, to be resilient, you've got to protect yourself from challenge. Well, it's actually the opposite. You know, there's things like drugs and alcohol and junk food and stuff and comfort, which you know people want to do, but it's not good for you because it
Yeah.
actually weakens you. So you've got to
Yes.
do the opposite. You know, fasting and self-discipline and cold and those kinds of things, and just generally also living I suppose an altruistic kind of life.
Yes.
But to me, it's not a suffering. It's an incredibly joyful thing. I'm a very, very happy man. I don't think there's a happier person on the face of the earth than I am. But it's an understanding how our bodies work. And the point
Yes.
of why I see Christianity is this: is that if you had a washing machine that broke
Yes.
down, but you wouldn't go out to your car and say, okay, here's the manual for the Volvo. Let's take that and try and repair the washing machine, because basically the maker, it's not the maker's manual. You'd go and get the washing machine if you fix things, which I don't. I'm not handy.
Yeah.
You'd get the maker's manual, and then you'd know how to fix it, whether it's a washing machine or a car or a life. So what's the maker's manual for us? Well, it's the Bible.
Yes.
That's the maker's manual. That's the guide to good living. So if you have a look at the principles in the Bible and you follow them, and I mean things that aren't necessarily like fasting and so forth, that aren't fashionable these days.
Yes.
But if you really look at them, and Sabbath keeping, which I'm not tremendously good at, I must say, but I try.
Sure.
If you do that, if you follow the maker's manual, then your life works better. You're happier. You're more resilient.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I'm listening to you, and you talk a lot about your biblical principles. Now, we mentioned Jesus. Who is Jesus to you? If you had to explain and say, okay, this is who Jesus is to me, and this is what Jesus means to me, who is Jesus to Jim?
Look, I have to say, I relate to the Jesus of the Synoptic Gospels and the Gospels probably more than I do to the risen Jesus described by Paul.
Sure.
I find that hard to relate to, but
Sure.
the Jesus as an individual, as a person, as a man, I find very, very appealing. He's like my rabbi. He's like my mentor, my example. It's a very personal thing for me. It's not some abstract, hey, the glorious risen Jesus and stuff. I mean, he did rise from the dead, obviously, and I believe all that stuff. But emotionally speaking, I see him as my rabbi, as my guru. That's kind of the way I see it. And look, and his teachings directly influenced me a lot. Like, for example, one of the things I love, apart from the washing of the disciples' feet, which is foundational to the way I understand Jim's group and my role, parable of talents, very meaningful to me. You know, God gives you abilities, and it's not really a matter of, you don't have to be the best. You just have to use what he's given us. So, you know, I might be the man with the 2 talents or even the 1 talent. It doesn't matter. What matters is what I do with what I've got. And I have a responsibility with that. I'm not responsible for being better than anyone else. I'm responsible for being the best person I can. I'm not saying I do a good job of that either, but still, that's the idea. And the other thing that really, really resonates with me, Jesus was very engaged with the poor. Blessed are the poor.
Yes.
Okay. They say poor in spirit. Well, blessed are the poor. Depends on which gospel you're talking about. But then
Right.
you see Jesus talking about it's harder for the rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than the camel to go through the eye of a needle. That's very meaningful to me because I'm a very rich man. Obviously, ridiculously wealthy in a sense.
Yes.
Not like a billionaire or something, but I mean, compared with most people. But what's money for?
Yes.
So it's very important to me that money is like it's a trust from God to use for His purposes. So I try really hard to live a very ordinary life. I never had a new car until late last year. Never. And only reason I
Wow.
bought a new car was electric. I think it's good for the environment. Never. I used to. My previous car was worth $10,000. My
Wow.
my clothes, apart from uniforms, come from Kmart. I don't spend money. If I want to eat out, posh restaurants don't go for it. Local pizza joint, Indian place, okay?
Yes.
Shouting people and so forth. So try and live a simple life as much as possible. The money that I've got, obviously, I've got to pay tithing. That's a powerful obligation. That's from the Bible. And then I fund the money into my research project. And I basically live on basically a fraction of my income.
Wow, man, I think that's so amazing. That's so amazing. And I I'm just blown away just by everything that you're sharing now. And I'm just so blown away, so blown away. So just to wrap up here, if you had to share something for those that are watching, for the entrepreneurs that want to start a business, those that want to, their family, if you had to leave something with them, what would you leave with them? What words would you leave with them?
I'd say, first of all, chasing money for its own sake is a pretty feeble aim for life. Okay, you need to be doing something worthwhile with your talents. I could not be involved in any business that I couldn't see real value. People I deal with, and I include things like speculating on cryptocurrencies and all the other garbage that goes on. That's all fundamentally wrong, as well as being a bad investment. You need to do what's the right thing,
Yes.
regardless of the money. You cannot put the money first. If you do, you'll make some very, very immoral decisions.
Yes.
And it's one reason I would not like to be a public company, because then you're watching your shareholders and stuff, and then you can do things, and you can't do that. You always think what's right. But what's really striking about that attitude is that again and again and again, I've done the thing that was not in my financial self-interest, but it was right. And then you look back and you discover that it was actually a very, very good business decision, not
Yes.
maybe short-term, but long-term. And that relates to things like reputation and the relationships that you deal and the way you deal with people. And just, it's God's way works.
Yes.
You run your business according to His principles. It's not only right, and it's better for you mentally, psychologically, spiritually, but it's better for your business.
Wow, that's great. And then finally, Jim, my 10-year-old son, when I told him about this interview, he was so excited to know that you're from Australia, because he wants to speak like Australian. He loves the accent. So, so he said to me, Dad, could you ask him if he can say something to me? So what would you say to, he's going to watch this, by the way. His name is Joshua. What would you say to my son, Joshua? He's 10 years old. He's an energetic kid, vibrant. He's a go-getter. What would you say to him?
Well, I'd say, Joshua, business is fun. It's really, really fun. It's the best thing. It's like a computer game. You like computer games, Joshua? I bet you do. It's like a computer game which is really complicated and interesting, and they pay you for playing it. Now, isn't that a great lifestyle? Because people ask me how many hours a week I work. I don't really know. But if you regard working as something you do for money rather than for doing what you love and you believe in, I retired decades ago. So
Wow.
it's a great thing, Joshua, and I hope you'll be a Christian, like you'll follow Jesus like your dad. That's the best you could wish for anybody. And if you do, it's a great way to exercise your faith. Because if you're in, and especially run your own business, nobody can tell you to do anything wrong. You set it aside, you run your business according to principles, and they work. But God bless you.
Wow, I really appreciate that, Jim. I know you're a very busy man, and I've just learned in just this few moments. I mean, it's just been so impactful for me just to glean from what you're doing and just a simple person that you are. I really appreciate your time. I love the simplicity of how you are, and that's something that I glean from, So thank you so much for this awesome, awesome time. And hopefully we'll get a chance to talk again soon. I think you're a very interesting person. There's so much that, of course, can learn from you. But I really appreciate your time so much. So thank you so much again.
All right. Thanks, Mathew. Good to talk to you.
All
See
right.
you then.
Thanks, Jim. All right. Bye. Wow. Wasn't that a powerful interview? I want to share with you key things here that I learned from Jim. There are so many things that I can share with you, but I want to highlight just a few that stuck out to me. One of the things that Jim shared was that when he started his business, he wanted to network with another business that was larger, more successful, but they turned him down. But he never gave up because he had a long-term vision. Jim was a resilient person. That's one thing that you need in business today. You have to be resilient. You can't just give up. So many times people want to start a business. They start a business today. If they don't see any turnover in 2 months, they jump to another business and then they jump. So you have people starting 10, 20, 15 businesses in a span of 6 months. You can't be successful that way. You have to start with something and you have to see things through. So resilience is a key thing that you're going to need, right, in order for you to be successful. Another thing Jim mentioned was that value. When you want to be successful, you have to make sure that you are giving people value. Don't just get in business just to make money, right? Because when you don't make the money that you're looking to make, your passion is going to go down, your interest goes down, and you try something else, and it shows. So make sure that you're offering value, because that is what is going to not just attract people to you, but that is what's going to keep them. Another thing Jim did was he researched. When you want to start a business, do your research. Don't just jump to a business because so-and-so said it's a lucrative business. So-and-so said you can make a lot of money. Do your research, do your due diligence. I talk about this a lot when I'm talking with other entrepreneurs and small businesses. And one of the things that you have to pay attention to is do your due diligence, do your research. Another key thing Jim mentioned was, be involved in your business. Be involved with your customers. Get to know your customers, because people can tell when you genuinely care about them. People can tell if you're interested in them or if you're just doing it just for the money. Now, one of the reasons why Jim's business grew from, he thought he was going to have just about 100 people to over 5,000 is because he is involved with the people. Do you know that he gave his personal email and phone number to all the franchisees, over 5,000 people? He wants them to reach out to him, to contact him, to know what's going on if they have any questions, and that is something too that I gleaned from that is get connected with the customers that you're serving. Let them know, listen, it's business, but I care about your well-being. And early on till we talked about mental health, let people know that you care, show them that you care. Another thing too is Jim made some improvements. So once he studied his competitors, he realized certain things that he could improve on, and he made those necessary adjustments. In business, you have to look at your competition, look at what they're doing great, and look at where they can, improve on it. And then you improve on what they're not doing too well. And finally, this is not the last one, but this is a huge one. Jesus talked about his principles came from the Lord Jesus in the Bible. Now, how many rich men? Jim is an example of a very wealthy man that loves the Lord Jesus Christ. How many? He's not ashamed of the gospel. He's not ashamed to let people know that Jesus is his role model. He's not ashamed. So we could all learn from that. We could all glean from that. We could all definitely learn from that. So as you're starting your journey, whether it's to start a business, to scale your existing business, just remember those key things. Remember and put those into practice, and you're going to see your business get to the next level. I hope that you've been able to glean something from this, and you're going to be great. I can see it already. God bless you.